Projectile motion is when a projectile, so an object, is projected into the air, okay, which therefore carries movement, so therefore that's the motion part of it. So projectile is the object through the air, and then motion is moving. When a body is projected, two things act on it: gravity, which pulls the object back to Earth, and air resistance. Okay, so very simple diagram. Without air resistance, this ball would fly a lot further than if air is present. So that's why when we kick or hit something, it often blunts. So it'll go up really quick and then it will blunt back down. Without air resistance, it'll probably look like the perfect parabolic path. Okay, but we have air resistance. So air resistance will change according to the characteristics of the projectile. The larger the object, the greater the surface area, which means that it will be subjected to greater air resistance. The lighter the object, the more it is affected by air resistance also. And then obviously the nature of the surface has an effect as well. So tight clothing compared to loose fitting for a long jumper, the loose baggy clothing is more likely to catch the air and as such provide more resistance. The angle of the object travelling through the air also affects the range or the distance the object will travel. So this one here, so for example, my discus is getting thrown to the left, okay? If I throw my discus properly, okay, I get it nice and flat, then essentially it only has this much surface area, okay? So this much surface area where wind can affect it. However, if I throw my discus upright, which many of us would have done in middle school, okay, I actually end up with the entire face down here open to more wind resistance. Okay, so the angle of which our object travels obviously impacts how far it will go. Some of the factors that affect projectile motion. So this is what you'll be talking about. Since the athlete cannot influence the path of the projectile once it has been released, the athlete needs to work on the three major factors affecting the projectile motion if they are to improve. So you need to consider the angle of release, the speed or velocity of release, and finally the height of release. Because by changing all these factors, you can actually change the distance or change your performance. So first one we have is angle of release. Changing the angle of release in sports, which involves projectile motion, will ultimately affect the distance achieved. An object released and landing at the same level has 45 degrees as an optimum release angle. So that means that we are releasing our object at the same level from which it is landing. Okay, that means the optimum is 45. As you can see, anything lower, so 30 degrees, is going to go shorter. 70 degrees is too great of an angle. It'll go up really high and not very far, and then 90 degrees straight up. So that's pretty simple to get ahead. So this is where it changes slightly. So we said earlier that an object being released at the same height it lands, the optimum degrees is roughly 45. Now this is where it's different in basketball in the sense that your height of release is already up high, but it is also lower than essentially its landing release. So you're shooting from lower than where you want the ball to land. So what does that mean for you? It means that your angle of release has to be greater than 45 degrees. And this little diagram here, you can see a 30-degree shot is most likely to hit the back of the rim and bounce out. 50 degrees, good chance. 70 degrees, perfect chance. Obviously, the higher you go, the more it is. However, the difference is between 50 and 70 degrees, you're going to have to put more power into the 70 degrees to get it up higher so it travels further. If someone who is really tall, so we've got this person here is shooting from here to here, their angle of release might be like this. Someone who's much shorter, shooting the ball from here, their angle of release has to be higher to get it up into the rim. That's a comparison you can make between you and your partner. Are you the same height? Are you releasing the ball at the same height, or is one above the other? With golf, okay, angle of release is really adjusted by the club that we choose. Okay, if we choose a really low iron, say for example a 3 iron, you see how flat this angle is. Okay, the ball's going to come off 90 degrees of that angle, so it's going to come off like this. Compared to our wedge over here that might have the angle like this, it's going to come off perpendicular and it's going to be much higher. So we adjust and we change our angle of release based on the club that we use. So obviously a driver is much flatter, so it's going to go further. Pitching wedge is much more of an angle, so it's going to go up a lot higher, but not as far. So that's how we can change it in golf. And then this is just an example of the types of distances based on wedges. So lob wedge has the greatest angle, it's in red. Sand wedge is pink, gap wedge blue, pitching wedge green. So greatest angle to least angle, and you can see the distances. So that's how we change the angle of release, depending on our shot or our performance. Height of release. So many sports involve projecting an object from a given height above the ground. In most cases, the height of release varies between 1.8 and 2.4 meters above the ground. The following generalizations can be made. The greater the height of release, the greater the horizontal distance it will cover, assuming the force is the same as well as the angle of release is the same. Basically, taller athletes have a distinct advantage over shorter athletes when attempted to gain maximum horizontal distance in certain throwing sports or techniques. As the height of release of a projectile increases, the optimum angle of release decreases. Okay, so that's what we're talking about here. If my rim is here, okay, just imagine my backboard is here, that's my rim. This person could essentially lob it a lot lower, get it in. This person is going to have to get up and over. So that's what we're talking about, the different heights of your release in your free throws. Okay. If the release point is lower than the target, the release angle needs to be greater than 45 degrees, as we mentioned earlier. And then finally, speed of release. The higher the speed of release, the greater the distance a projectile would carry. Makes sense. Okay, the speed of a projectile at release is far more important than the height or angle of release in maximising the distance travelled. Okay, that's why so many elite 100-metre sprinters also make really good long jumpers. Okay, their speed of release was far greater than most other athletes. We can also adjust our speed of release based on the club we use or the club length, as we mentioned in the previous video. Longer levers generates greater speed. So two people hitting the ball with the same club length. Okay, if one person is swinging it at 50 meters a second, okay, they are going to go this far. Someone then hitting it at 100 meters a second, same angle, same ball, same club, same everything, they're obviously going to hit it twice as far given that they are swinging at twice the speed.